Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is HeroQuest, and if you'll kindly recall, we went through the barbarian skills and elf skills in a previous video from the set of skill cards now available on Etsy through Heroicadventurers. That's Lestodante, who kindly provided me with this set of skill cards. Thank you so much, Heroicadventurers. These are awesome. You heard me praise them non-stop in the last video, but we only went over 2 heroes, so we're going to go over the remaining 2 heroes now, and this is actually my first detailed look at each of the cards, so you're going to be getting my genuine reactions as well. Let's look at the Dwarf skills, and just as a reminder, all of the heroes are able to randomly draw 1 card from their own skill deck, even if you are a wizard and you've already drawn all of your spell suits, or you're the elf and you've already drawn your spell suit or your elf spells. Using this homebrew system, you would be able to draw 1 of your cards when you begin a quest. If you don't use that skill, then you can draw another one at the beginning of the next quest and keep the one that you have, so you can kind of save them up, but you do have a limit. The maximum amount of skill cards that you can carry is the amount of mind points that you have. However, when you do use your skill card, it is gone for that quest. You can only use that one and it's done. The hero who completed the objective of the previous quest is able to draw an additional skill card. Got it? Alright, we're going to go ahead and check out the Dwarf skills, yes. And the first one is Size Matters. Fighting huge monsters really galvanizes you. You may roll 1 additional combat die on both attack and defense when fighting against ogres, trolls, dragons, or any one monster that occupies more than a single square or with more than 5 body points. This skill lasts until the end of the quest. This is an awesome card to draw, by the way. I love that one. Really makes the dwarf into the tank. Improve defense. Your courage and firmness instill confidence in your companions. When you play this card, all heroes you can see may roll 1 additional combat die on their next defense roll. You don't get any bonus. The Barbarian has one just like that, but for attack. Steal Spell. Play this card when you are adjacent to a spell-casting enemy to try stealing one of his spells. Both you and your target roll a red die and each add their current mind points. If you get the highest score, the spellcaster must discard one of his spells at random. Otherwise, nothing will happen. This doesn't count as an action. Mighty Blow. Play this card at the beginning of your turn. You may roll only 1 movement die during this turn. You may attack with as many combat dice as the number of squares you walked on. The enemy defends with 2 dice less than usual. Requires an axe or a hammer. Hold on, I've got to internalize that. So you play it at the beginning of your turn. You may only roll 1 movement die during this turn. You may attack with as many combat dice as the number of squares you walked on. So if you just roll a 1 or a 2, it's not going to be very good for you. But if you roll a 3 to a 6, a staggering 6, then you would walk up to an enemy and you would roll that many combat dice to attack. And not only that, the enemy defends with 2 dice less than usual. So if it's a goblin or an orc, they're done. They are just toast. Skeleton, any minor monster, they're out of here. I like that. It does require an axe or a hammer, and some of these cards do require specific weapons to be used, which means if you draw them in the first few quests and you don't have that weapon, it is a loss for you, but that's the roll of the die. Play this card instead of attacking. Roll 3 combat dice against an adjacent enemy. If you roll 3 skulls, you kill the enemy immediately, giving them no chance to defend. On any other result, your attack fails. This skill requires an axe. Ooh, that's interesting. So you use this card as an action, and it doesn't matter who the enemy is. It could be a dragon. It could be the frozen horror. It could be any boss monster. It doesn't matter. If you roll 3 skulls, and you have a 50% chance of doing that, then that monster will die. I've got some dice here. I want to look at the odds here. Let's say I've got the dwarf, and I want to move into range of a boss with like 8 body points. That's 2 skulls. Alright, I'll try this. Oh yeah! Nope, no skulls at all. And 1 more. 2 out of 3. And Pataya, not even a single skull. See? Horrible rolls. I knew I couldn't take advantage of that. Roll 3 combat dice against an adjacent enemy, not just 1 skull, just 1 skull. So this is not an overpowered card by any means. You still have pretty much a 50% chance of rolling all 3 skulls, because half of each die is made up of skulls. But as you can see, I rolled like, what, 6 times, and I can't even do it. I suck. There we go. There we go. 3 skulls. Finally. And boom. 2 out of 3. And boom, 2 out of 3. Boom, 2 out of 3. Boom, 1 out of 3. I would not like to have this card. I think I would just rather attack over and over again. But I understand the odds not being in your favor here, because maybe it's not 50%. What's the actual number then? So you have 50% of a chance on that first die to roll a skull. That's indisputable. And then you have 50% of a chance on the second die, but maybe that doesn't necessarily mean that you have 50% chance to roll 2 skulls if you roll both die at the same time, does it? I think it does mean that. I think the math does work out that way. Anyways, enough of that. That's the master stroke. Toughness, and some of these cards do have typos, but that's okay. You can play this card only when you're down to 3 body points or less. You may now roll 2 additional green combat dice when defending. The effect is cancelled only when you recover 1 or more body points. Note, if you reach 0 body points while the skill is active, you are not able to drink a healing potion to survive. Ooh, and there's your trade-off. Jeez, enraged. You can play this card only when you're down to 3 body points or less. You may now roll 2 additional black combat dice when attacking. The effect is cancelled only when you recover 1 or more body points. And if you reach 0, you're not able to drink a healing potion to survive while this skill is active. Headbutt, charming art. Love the art choices that were used on these cards. Play this card if an adjacent enemy with 3 or less body points is preparing to attack you. You can try to stop this attack by surprising your enemy with a rude headbutt. What a rude, crude dude. To do so, roll a combat die. If you roll a white shield, the enemy is stunned and unable to continue the attack. Don't open the door. Love this one. Play this card after opening a door and seeing the contents of the room or hallway. You may close the door immediately. To do so, roll a red die. If you roll anything but a 1 or a 2, the monsters don't notice you and the door is closed successfully. The monsters aren't yet activated. On a roll of 1 or 2, the monsters see you and are activated as usual. This is a pretty low risk card, but it can fail if you use it, so that's really cool. Eagle Eye. Play this card instead of searching for treasure. If no special treasure is found in the room, you may draw 3 treasure cards at once. If you draw wandering monsters or hazards, they have no effect, but you can't draw other cards. May only be used in a room. And favorite skill. Play this card as soon as it's drawn. It allows you to choose any card you like from the Dwarf skill deck, rather than drawing a random one from the top of the deck. I like that, and there's no card in here that's kind of like a wasted opportunity, like the Barbarian and Elf skill cards each contain a card that's like, you didn't learn anything this time around. This is a bit different. The Dwarf just doesn't have that disadvantage. No matter what, you're going to get a skill, or you're going to get the skill that you want exactly. I like that a lot. Alright, so I've said it before, I'm a big fan of how the Heroic Adventurers cards are. These are the classic EU, UK size of cards, and they go immediately into my classic HeroQuest box with all of my classic stuff and my old hammer plastic enemies and my Skaven and all that cool stuff that I want to use with my master edition of classic HeroQuest, including all the talisman minis that I've painted with Mephiston Red. But I say all of that to underline the point that while I love all of the homebrew that you guys make and see and show me and invent and create, it's all awesome. This has got to be my favorite. It is just so closely aligned with how I imagine HeroQuest rules as written to be. Like, Lesto Dante could tell me that he was one of the original designers that worked on the game, and I'd believe him. Okay, maybe let's not go that far, but these are worthy of rules as written. Just saying, they are worthy. All right, wizard skills are next. And just a quick reminder, the wizard does select their 3 spells in their single element. The elf would then go on to select a spell suit. The wizard would select 2 more and still be able to get one of these skill cards. If it's the wizard's 2nd or 3rd quest, they would draw an additional 1 or 2 if they had completed the quest objective, in addition to already having the skill if they didn't use it from the previous quest. So yeah, the wizard could potentially have just a whole bunch of cards. The wizard has the most mind points out of any of the stock heroes as well, so they've really got an opportunity here to have 9 spells and 6 skill cards. So it would take a lot of saving up, but they could do it. And man, talk about a powerhouse ready for expansions. And of course, additional skill cards if the wizard has a talisman that increases their mind points. So, a magic moment. Play this card at the start of your turn to cast as many spells as you wish without discarding them. You spend 1 mind point for each spell cast. You can't cast a spell twice during this turn, and you can't cast healing spells. Due to the heavy use of magic, you'll skip the next turn to regain your strength. So you burst into a room, there's the boss monster, there's a bunch of chaos warriors and the big bad and just an army of undead. this is the time to use this card, but you're not going to be able to do anything on your next turn, so play it wisely. Sling attacks everywhere. And you'll notice that this is talking about casting spells, not using skills, so it's not going to allow you to use a bunch of saved up skills. Arcana Study. Play this card before beginning a quest. You may pick 2 extra spell cards from any unchosen set of spells. The 2 cards must be from the same set. So this might get a little bit sticky if the elf has already chosen their suit. But you could still do it. You could still make a note that you're choosing X or Y specific spells. You could even choose from the elf deck. It says any unchosen set of spells. It is aligned with the description of the card, the title of it, Arcana Study. Reflect Spell. You can play this card at any time. You may reflect a spell back at the spellcaster. The spellcaster and all other monsters according to the spell in the same room suffer the full effects of the spell while you and your companions are safe. To do so, roll a red die. If you roll a 1 or 2, you fail. On any other roll, the spell is reflected. Big fan of that one. Really big fan of that one. That's a really powerful spell. And I don't think it's wrong to give the wizards some extra power because they need it. Spell Recovery. You may spend 2 mind points to try to recover 1 spell you used in the current quest. Roll a red die. If you roll 3 to 6, you regain the spell. This skill is discarded only if you recover the spell. Using this skill takes your whole turn, so you can't move or perform any action. This also works with spell scrolls. Ooh, I didn't even think about spell scrolls. So that very first card, a magic moment, that should allow you to also use spell scrolls. It does say cast as many spells as you wish without discarding them. Maybe this is up to interpretation. I like that spell recovery can be used repeatedly until you're able to regain the spell. Not on the same turn, but you don't discard the card if you don't regain the spell. Telekinesis. This skill may only be used in a room with a library, so I guess a bookshelf. You can cause books to fly at monsters in the same room to keep them busy. Monsters with 1 body point will skip their next turn. Monsters with 2 or more body points must each roll a red die at the start of their turn. If they roll a 1 or 2, they will also skip their turn. On any other roll, they're unaffected. Monsters with 1 body point, so being that this is the UK, EU size of cards, I could definitely see this pretty much just affecting any monster in a room with a bookshelf, period. If you're playing with the US rules, it'll still be a great number of the monsters. Imagine using this in a room full of ogres and their body points haven't been revealed to the players yet. This one could get sticky if you're using this against the ogre horde. But I don't know, as Morcar, you'd be able to see the body point tracker and try to figure out what exactly this would do. Double skill. Use this card as soon as it is drawn. You may immediately draw 2 more cards from the wizard's skill deck. Wow. This is a good one. This is a really cool one. And it is kind of like the dwarf skill. I bet you that's the card that pretty much tells you whether or not you get to learn a skill or what have you. In contrast to the elf and barbarian skill cards, there's 1 in each deck, like I said, that says, yeah, you know, you didn't learn anything this time around. Actually, that isn't quite how the barbarian one works. It's not that you don't learn it, it's that you argue with another of the party members. You argue with another party member and you each roll a red die. Whoever gets the higher score may draw a skill card. So actually the elf is the only one that has a card that says you didn't learn anything. So really, each one of the heroes has their own unique card that deals with the skill deck in particular. I love that. I love that. Really well done. Just high game design convention there. All right, let's get through the rest of these. We're almost done. Levitation. Play this card at the start of your turn. You may levitate to cross over any pit, trap, chasm, or crevice. You may only roll 1 movement die during this turn, but you can levitate for the duration. Retry spell. Play this card when you fail at casting a spell against an enemy, or if the target of your spell has successfully defended and suffers no damage, you may immediately cast that spell a second time against the same target. Wow, that one's cool. I like that one. Fire control. This card may be played only in a room with a fireplace. It will summon 3 fireballs, which will attack with 2 black combat dice each. You may direct the fireballs towards different enemies or combine their power against 1 or more targets. There is a reminder on the rules card that sometimes this is going to refer to these black or green combat dice. These are like the custom German dice or the power dice, which should be functionally the same. I don't know because I don't have any. Floris at HeroQuest also makes these colored dice, but if you don't have them then you can roll an equal number of standard combat dice separately and consider a black shield as a successful result as well. Because ultimately, that's what these black and green ones are for, extra attack or extra defense. You may direct the fireballs towards different enemies or combine their power against one or more targets. Love how these are worded, by the way. They're very elegantly worded. Deny chaos. Why would you want to do that? Play this card when the evil wizard player goes to draw or play a card from the chaos event deck. Both of you must roll a red die, and if your score is equal to or higher than his score, he must discard that card. Yeah, by the way, I said it in the last video, but this is the creator of the Chaos Event deck. So these cards mesh perfectly well with that deck in use, and it gives the heroes a little bit of customization, a little bit more of an experience tailored to them. So these Chaos Event cards do the same thing for the Zargon player. Spell Mix. Play this card before beginning a quest. When selecting your set of spells, you may pick spells from any of the available sets. You can't select more spells than the usual number of spells you're allowed to use. You can't choose spells from a set already chosen by other spellcasters. So the way I would interpret this card is, as the wizard, you go ahead and just choose 3 of whatever you want. But then that does kind of screw over the elf a little bit, because now the elf is choosing their second suit. If the wizard has chosen 1 card from 3 of the suits, 3 of the suits are now going to be down to 2 cards, and I don't see it making sense that the elf would be able to choose one of those and then also pick another card, because it's not really the rules, and they're not outlined here. So I think it does limit the elf, but it may be advantageous for the elf to give up certain skills. I mean, they would still have the 1 deck that they could choose that would still have 3 spells in it, but this would be pretty redundant. The wizard would then choose the remaining spell decks, and it would be as if they just had a normal choosing of spells. So what's really happening here is the wizard is going to be taking a potential spell from the elf that the elf may have liked to have, and then otherwise it's just normal spell choosing, right? But if that happens, the wizard may be able to use it in tandem with one of his skill cards if he has more than just the spell mix skill card that he's drawn at the beginning of the quest. It may be an additional attack spell that the wizard will be able to use with reflect spell, or not reflect spell, a magic moment or spell recovery or retry spell. And in that regard, it would be more advantageous for the wizard to have the spell than the elf. All right, and that is a complete overview of the wizard and dwarf skills from the skills deck. Again, enormous fan of this deck. Can't wait to actually play this. They're fair enough, they're challenging enough, and interesting enough for the players that I could set these up in my very next game with no context at all. Just throw them at my players and be like, pick one at random. Oh, the looks on their faces. I wish I had people to play HeroQuest with. Alright, thank you so much, brave heroes, for watching. Please comment anything you like down below. Do these quests tickle your fancy? Do you think that you would like to get these for your next session? And would you like to have these in a 2021 size format for your contemporary HeroQuest games? Sound off down below. Maybe Heroicadventurers will see your feedback and incorporate it into his next deck. Links in the description, of course, as always. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.